Hi, it's Stephanie Pruitt, and it is day 27 of 30 by 30 by 30, where I'm writing 30 poems in 30 days in relation to works in the 30 Americans exhibit. For day 27, I drafted a work in relation to Kara Walker's Camptown Ladies. Kara Walker was born in 1969 in Stockton, California. She currently lives and works out of New York, and Camptown Ladies is paper and adhesive on wall. It was crafted in 1998. Kara Walker's work is quite recognizable in the contemporary art world. Often black paper silhouettes that tell a very involved, often horrific, and sometimes grotesque narrative, many times dealing with gender and violence, sexual violence, slavery era, and in the case of Camptown Ladies and many of Kara Walker's works, and in the 30 Americans exhibit, the work spans an entire wall and shows multiple scenes taking place to an extent that it really develops like a story, kind of unfolding. And even in the way that you walk through the exhibit and you see Camptown Ladies, it's like you're moving from left to right, keep going through, and then eventually you get to a silhouette cutout that have the words "The End." And the end is up in the clouds. So it's like you're reading a story, and you think about the nostalgia of bedtime stories and how comfortable they feel to us often, because we recognize what we expect to be this narrative arc that introduces us to a setting and the characters and what's happening. You have the rising action, then you have the conflict, kind of the apex of the conflict, and then a resolution, and you reach the end, and everything is together. And of course, the reality we know is that often stories don't take that linear, direct path. So I'll read the draft and talk about it a little bit. We moved, packed all we cared to keep, and raced across town, across country, up north, became expatriates. We moved away, away. We wanted a way to not be where we had been, away. We wanted a way to not see what we had seen, a way to make a way. Seeking a different story, another page to turn to reach the end we want, tied with a bow and resolved, the end. Where? In the clouds, in the sky, served to us with a side of pie. What corner to turn to reach the elusive end? So the draft is a little long for the brevity of the poem. You see it spans several pages. You see lots of things crossed out and kind of different starts. I started with so many different images and ideas with this draft. Initially, I was kind of narrating the various scenes, trying to narrate the scenes in the image, and that didn't feel like an interesting kind of start to the poem. Then I thought about really this trend that I'm seeing in stories or storytelling kind of being a really interesting element. Like even in the business world, marketers will now call themselves commercial or corporate storytellers. And you go to places and they ask, what's your story? As if it's this quick, simple thing that you can encapsulate kind of in an elevator speech. Story, story, story is this constant buzzword. And initially, when I started kind of trying to narrate the story in this visual narrative, there was no way. I won't say there was no way. I didn't come up with a way in that moment to verbally and textually do that without oversimplifying it. And that felt like it would have been another act of violence, another act of appropriation by oversimplifying a very complicated narrative. So going in a completely different direction, I thought about how we actually often try to move away and get away from complicated stories, and how migrations or more personal individual moves often come out of a sense of I need to get away from this story, change my story. And there can be very valid reasons, and it's smart sometimes. Obviously, a change of scenery, a change of setting can present different and new conditions, more opportunities. So I'm not saying that there's a problem with migrations or moving or leaving, but the idea that we can get away from the story or get away from the early chapters of our story by simply moving, just, that doesn't pan out. So that's kind of the direction I went with the draft. But the other thing I was thinking of that I didn't get to in my writing, that I'm still thinking about, is how we often try to write other people's stories for them and define other people and what they're doing in ways that end up completely missing the mark or oversimplifying, what's really done. And it just, I don't know, I'm talking in generalities here and I want to be more specific. I just think, I guess, like, I think about my daughter and my niece and, young people in my life, and I want them to be the authors of their own story. And that sounds really cute and buzzwordy, but when this happens, it's harder to deal with. Like when my niece asserts to me that I will do this, this, and this, and like she's authoring her own story. Yeah, that's really great when you're like 25, but when you're 9 or 10, sometimes that's hard for us to manage. So this is no simple thing. It's not an easy dynamic to write your own story. But I think part of it starts with the willingness to recognize when other people are trying to overwrite their narrative onto you and just stopping that. And then eventually growing into the place where you have your own voice. Like sometimes when people, anyway, I won't even go there. I guess just my point is, like, you have to, not you, let me make this personal. I am learning to set parameters in the way that people talk to me, talk about me, and set parameters around people's expectations of me. So like in a work situation, I do some consulting. It's really important for me to say, you can expect for me to communicate with you twice a week, and this is this, and you can expect this is, so like I'm setting up the story that I'm going to write. I'm not allowing them to tell me what I should be doing. It's and it's a collaborative thing. There's very rarely a story that has a single author. But just overall, my point is, like, you can't butter my butt and call me a biscuit. You can't. You don't have permission. You don't have permission to decide what you're going to do to me, to my body, to the work that I'm doing, and call it what you want. Because I'm the author of that. I own it. I can't make everyone agree with me. I can't make everyone, tell my story the same way that I do. But I absolutely decide what I know my story to be, and I decide who I deal with in my life and who I work with according to the way they honor or dishonor my story, which belongs to me. Yes, period. And that's the other thing, I'll stop here because I feel like I'm rambling, but story. Yeah, there's just not very rarely a clear beginning or ending, but for practicality's sake, the covers close on the book, but that doesn't mean it's complete. The painting has, edges that are framed in, but that doesn't mean we see the entire picture. That doesn't mean we see the entire picture. And having the creative imagination and just recognition that there's more, on the next page, whether someone is reading it to us and kind of giving us the story. This is it. Here's the big point. Narrative voice. So with any given story, whether it's historical, something that's actually happened, something we're trying to figure out, as readers, a lot of times we want a narrator to move us through and help us to know what we should get. Like a narrator giving us the story that we will receive and get. But I think most realistic and like honestly complicated stories are multi-authored. And I've heard some people ask, what is Kara Walker's project? Like some critics, some art critics, or other will ask, what is she trying to do with these images? What is the story? What direction is she taking us in? And I think with a lot of artists, if you could answer that very quickly and simply, it's probably oversimplified art. And I'm not saying that everything has to be a struggle to understand or locate in some place that's meaningful to you, but I think expecting a single artist to narrate a very complicated story is lazy on our part as viewers. And I like that this exhibit and this whole project, the 27 days, have not allowed me to be lazy at all with my thinking and with my kind of creative productivity. And I'm not saying this is my best work. I can absolutely tell you this has not been my best work in terms of my writing, but it has pushed me in a rigorous way to explore ideas, process them in ways that maybe without the time pressure I wouldn't have accomplished. And I'm grateful for it pushing me through the stories in that way. So, all right, y'all. It is day 27, but it's the 22nd. So you see the 22 tomorrow. You will see the 23 as we get closer and closer to the 30 by 30 by 30 goal. Take care.